What avoidants think at night when your silence finally hits them. When your silence finally hits an avoidant, it doesn't land the way you think it does. On the outside, they look composed, detached, maybe even relieved. But at night, when the distractions fade and the room goes quiet, something shifts. Avoidants spend the day convincing themselves they don't need anyone. They rationalize distance. They tell themselves space is freedom. But when your messages stop, when the emotional pressure disappears, and when they realize you're no longer reaching, it creates a strange psychological vacuum. And that vacuum is loud. At night, avoidants don't usually think, I miss them so much, I need to call. It's subtler than that. They think in fragments. Why haven't they reached out? Are they okay? Did they move on already? The silence challenges their internal narrative that they are the one in control. Avoidants are comfortable when they are the ones pulling away. But when you pull back first, especially calmly and without drama, it unsettles them. Because now they are the ones who are unsure. And uncertainty is something they quietly struggle with. At night, their mind replays moments they pretended didn't matter. That conversation where you looked hurt, the time you asked for reassurance, the way you went quiet before the final disconnect. Avoidance suppress during the day, but suppression weakens when the world slows down. They don't suddenly become emotional poets. They become restless thinkers. They analyze. They justify. Maybe it's for the best. They were too much anyway. But underneath those thoughts is a softer one they rarely admit. What if I pushed them too far? That question lingers longer than they expect. Avoidants fear engulfment, yes, but they also fear abandonment. It's just buried deeper. So when your silence is steady, not reactive, not angry, just consistent, it signals something serious. It tells them you are no longer chasing. And that's when their attachment system quietly activates. You see, avoidants are used to partners eventually breaking the silence, sending the check in text, reopening the door. When that doesn't happen, their confidence wobbles. They start checking their phone more than usual, not obsessively, just enough to notice the absence. They might scroll through old conversations, reread your last message. Look at your social media, not to reach out, but to gauge your emotional temperature. Are you happy? Are you distracted? Are you replacing them? The fear isn't dramatic. It's subtle and internal. It shows up as a tightness in the chest they quickly dismiss, a small wave of regret they push down, a memory that surfaces at 1:37 and when sleep won't come easily. But here's the deeper layer. Avoidants equate vulnerability with loss of control. So when your silence creates emotional discomfort, they resist labeling it as missing you. Instead, they call it irritation, or confusion, or curiosity. But the truth is, silence removes their safety net. When you were pursuing, even if they complained about it, it reassured them of their value. Your effort confirmed they mattered. When that effort disappears, they are left alone with themselves. And for someone who avoids emotional depth, that can feel confronting. They begin wondering whether they misjudged you, whether your calm withdrawal means you've emotionally detached. And if you've detached, that means they are no longer the one choosing distance. They are the one being left behind. At night, when pride is quieter and ego is softer, avoidance sometimes feels something close to regret. Not always regret for losing you specifically, but regret for repeating a pattern. They recognize, even if they won't say it out loud, that they tend to disconnect when things get real. They remember the moment intimacy deepened and they pulled back. They remember your patience and your exhaustion and your final, quiet acceptance. That acceptance is what echoes in their head, because anger is easier to dismiss. But calm silence, that feels final, and finality is heavy. Now, will every avoidant text you the next morning? No. Many will sit with the discomfort and do nothing. Avoidance is their coping mechanism. They would rather endure silent longing than risk vulnerability. But that doesn't mean your silence meant nothing. It often means more than chasing ever did. It forces them to sit with consequences instead of control. It creates space for reflection instead of resistance. And sometimes, in that quiet reflection, they realize that your absence feels different from the others. Because this time, you didn't beg, you didn't argue, you didn't threaten, you simply stopped. And that calm withdrawal speaks louder in the dark than any emotional confrontation ever could.